Look at So, hey everyone. So today I am very excited to have with me today Gordon Smith, the CEO and co-founder of Biproxi, a phenomenal, nice guy from San Diego. And he has a phenomenal story and journey, and we are going to learn all about it. So Gordon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So Gordon, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Before 10X, before Fortress, before college, before everything else, where are you from and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah. My dad was a developer, actually, so we grew up in Marin County. Ended up moving to Argentina when I was younger.
Speak Spanish?
Speak Spanish. We were there probably 6 or 7 years until the terrorism got pretty bad. And we actually ended up driving all the way back from Buenos Aires to San Francisco. Then finished high school in Marin County, went to college at Santa Clara, the ability to play soccer. And I ended up playing professional soccer for a couple of years after college, and then went into commercial real estate.
Wow. So first of all, I didn't even know you could drive from Argentina, Buenos Aires to San Francisco.
Yeah. It's all the way to the Pan American Highway. And then you put the car in the boat and fly over the canal and keep going.
Really?
Yeah.
People still do that?
I don't know if you could do it today. It's probably a little more dangerous.
Okay. How long does it take?
It took 7 weeks. So,
Wow.
yeah.
See, you're like the real voyage. When people say, like, my parents were immigrants, came over the boat from Europe or anywhere else, you actually did that.
Yeah,
Like,
no, and I used to go back every summer and work in either Argentina or Uruguay. So my family was a little crazy in that sense.
wow. Okay, so you went to college, then you played professional soccer,
I
like
did.
real professional soccer?
Well, the United States has sort of evolved, right? So at the time I got out of college, the outdoor league was sort of in bankruptcy. So I ended up playing in the indoor league, which was called the MISL.
Right, so this is before MLS was even
Before,
invented.
yep, yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So you had a phenomenal career. You were the all-star. You were the Michael Jordan of the indoor
No,
soccer league.
I don't know about that actually. The team I played for went bankrupt, and I got waived. It was actually my first real business lesson that um, doesn't always work out. So
We could just stop right now. So you get there, then you get into commercial real estate,
I did.
and you work your way. So we're gonna go briefly through
Sure.
your first few jobs until you got to 10X,
Yep.
and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. So I ended up moving back to the Bay Area and really became a tenant rep broker for a firm called CBRE, which you probably have heard of. I did that for almost 8 or 9 years, but I always thought there was something more I wanted to do. But I was also in a position where I was doing very well, so quitting and going back to school full time was a little bit of a sacrifice. So I went and got my degree at Santa Clara, my MBA, and then picked up and moved to New York and interviewed with a bunch of different firms. And I guess probably about a year later, I ended up actually making the move and going to work for BlackRock, which really, that team at BlackRock ended up being the team that started Fortress. So,
I mean, that's a phenomenal. Fortress, BlackRock are two phenomenal companies all there. So you go to Fortress. You were part of the beginning team of that.
well, so I ended up really at BlackRock. We ended up buying 50,000 homes from the UK Ministry of Defense. So I ended up moving to London, and ended up running that company. I was in London for probably 6 or 7 years. I have 4 daughters, so they're all born there. And then came back to San Francisco.
Gotcha. You're the real international family. Argentina, London, where else? New York. Wow. So you go to Fortress. Then after that you go landed by 10X.
Correct. So the 10X story is a little bit interesting. We ended up doing a deal with auction.com when I was at Fortress. We had a portfolio company that gave them deal flow in exchange for equity in auction, which auction really is the residential side of the business. 10X is the commercial side. And so I ended up going on the board of auction and struck up a relationship with the founder. And he sort of convinced me to help him come build the commercial business. So I left Fortress in 2014.
Right. So auction then still was a startup back then.
No. So auction actually, believe it or not, was a very large business on the residential side. It started during the RTC crisis. They originally were doing sort of ballroom auctions. They moved it online. They took on a great capital partner by the name of Stone Point that kind of bought an interest in the company, and that kind of allowed them to grow it. And then Jeff, the founder, really wanted to create a commercial business, and that's kind of how I got involved.
Did you get involved? So you're at auction for 10X for quite a few years.
Yep.
And then I'm assuming one day you guys were sitting by the water cooler, you and your co-founder saying, "Hey, this is kind of getting boring. Let's, So how did it?
Yeah, so there was, there was always a desire. So 10x is an unbelievable platform to really just sell an asset.
Right.
We always had a vision of trying to create kind of an end-to-end platform where an agent could list on our platform. Then they could also run their transactions similar to 10x. They could buy all their data products that they would get from CoStar or other providers, and then they could ultimately sell it online. So it was almost a place where an agent could kind of run their whole business without ever having to leave. Versus what they use today, agents use different incremental solutions.
Sure.
There's really not one
Mhm.
kind of end-to-end platform.
Right. It's really cool. Actually, I spoke to quite a few agents in the past few weeks. Is if they had the ability, from the day they get a leasing signing, whatever it may be, some company to create their offering memorandum, their photos, and everything like that, one centralized place instead of having to do it every single time.
Correct.
It's like sort of type of mix in some type of machine learning or AI within it, just to automate the whole entire process. It would be simple.
And we're kind of on our way there. We now have kind of two brands. We recently closed on a company called OfficeSpace.com, which is really the second largest
Right.
listing platform in the United States. That will be the place where an agent can go list for free on our platform. And then Biproxi really has become the brokerage services business where essentially an agent can run their transaction. They can use the shop, which we are kind of, we call it the Amazon of commercial real estate marketing tools. But they can essentially buy everything in one place.
Gotcha. So let's get into how Biproxy got started. You obviously have this way, this thought process, this dream of making, life easier for agents and making commercial real estate
I'd say our target is really that middle market agent.
middle market agent. Gotcha. So how did your co-founders get together and decide that we're going to leave together and we're going to decide start this other company?
Well, I left first. So
Oh, okay.
what happened was 10x was sold, and I essentially took all of 2017 off and sort of developed a business plan. Launched the business, I guess, in early 2018. And my co-founder, Jan Kamish, who was still at 10x, left 10x to join me.
Mm-hmm.
And then another co-founder, Thatcher Milholland, also worked with me at 10x. He left later. And then our fourth co-founder, Carrington Guy, I guess he was with me really at the very beginning. He was the one that was not at 10x.
Right.
So
Was it hard to convince your co-founders to leave and start, from established company to join something a
not
startup?
really. I mean, we'd all worked together for a long time, so there was a level of trust there.
Mm-hmm.
The business was originally funded by a reasonably large, convertible note, so there was capital to kind of get it going. And no, I think everybody really bought into the vision of what we were trying to do.
Right.
And I think that was in part because that's what we learned at 10x.
Right. So, being an established executive team already obviously has its benefits. Each one comes with their connections, their reputation already, their vast experience that they had. You're not like a new college kid starting a startup.
Right.
So, what are the type of challenges that someone like that goes through when they're beginning to start a career?
There's really no substitute for the fact it's just a lot of work. Right? Yes, we'd had the playbook before, but we were still trying to do a lot of things that we didn't do at 10x, right? So we didn't really have the listing platform. So recreating that was, a little bit of a challenge. Creating the shop, which is the place where everybody can kind of buy their marketing tools. We definitely understood the transactional component because we've done that, but there were definitely elements of our business plan that we'd never done.
Okay, so talk to me like such as what?
So I think, for instance, we had to go find a development team, right? When you're starting a business, I think most people will tell you that you think the easy solution is to go outsource it because you don't really have the capital to go build a team. And obviously, recruiting engineers is very competitive. So, making the right choice there was
Right.
very challenging. And you're always sort of in a hurry. It's sort of you wake up every day and sometimes you don't feel like you're making a lot of progress, but there's kind of this step function, right, where you kind of feel like you're plateauing and get
Yeah.
to
So then, I'm going to take a sidetrack and get into that personal thing over there. How do you personally deal with that? Because as a founder, um, obviously you're dealing with imposter syndrome. You're dealing with the syndrome, the fact that you feel alone, about this journey. And you mentioned it going up, like there's no progress being made. You feel like that, and like you wake up every day and you come to the end of the day, like, what did I do today? Even though yes, you did stuff, but you don't feel like you're reaching the
right.
end line.
Well, and I think,
Right?
obviously, as we all know, you're trying to meet certain milestones to raise more capital, right? So there's that additional pressure. I think the thing I've learned, and I'm older than probably most co-founders, is
What are you,
sometimes,
22?
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you actually can go faster by going slower. So there were a lot of times I think when I was younger in my career, I would sort of break a bunch of glass and try and kind of go as fast as possible.
Right.
But to a large extent, if you can kind of create the right foundation, it may feel like you're going slower, but eventually you'll go faster.
Right. Gotcha. I mean, that makes so much sense. And this, I'm assuming, is part of some of the lessons you learned as being a first-time founder.
Correct. I mean, and we learned a little bit as a 10x too, right? Because
Right.
10x was in some ways an established brand, but we really were starting a business,
Right.
so we went through a lot of the same challenges.
Gotcha. Was there ever a time in the beginning of the journey of Biproxi, like, holy shit, we're not going to make it, or like, the money's running out of the bank, or how are we going to go to the next step? Like, any of those types of moments?
Not really. I mean, I'm generally a pretty optimistic person. I think if you're gonna be in sort of the startup world and you're not optimistic, I think it's going to be pretty painful. Um, we definitely had a very interesting fundraising process because I'd never really dealt with the venture capital community. I'd certainly dealt with the private equity world, but the two were quite different. So that was an interesting process.
So you recently, I guess, back in September, raised 10 million.
We did. We closed in July, August on our seed round, which was 10 million.
Right. Actually, a few days back, you announced the acquisition of OfficeSpaces.com.
Correct.
What else do you have in store?
I certainly wouldn't say it here. But we got very lucky. I think we have unbelievable capital partners. Graycroft is our lead investor. RPM is the other VC firm that invested. That's really amazing. Newmark Knight Frank is a strategic investor, and then the kind of the venture capital arm of NAR made an investment also. So I feel like we've got kind of the all-star team of investors.
Well, forget about that. The all-star executive team and all the employees together with you.
Yes, and we're now up to almost probably 32 people.
Wow. And hopefully going 100, 1,000, all that. So when you come in, when you've been through, working in the corporate world, so Fortress and BlackRock, going to startup 10x, and then obviously eventually starting your own startup, you obviously had some type of experience in culture, preconceived notions of what a culture should be like, or, how executives should treat employees. What how did you go about building that within, Biproxi?
That's obviously a little bit of a challenge too, because I come from what I'd say a very rough and tough New York sort of culture, and obviously the sort of the startup culture is very different, and the team in San Diego is obviously very different. I think it was just an evolutionary process. I think I probably made plenty of mistakes at the very beginning, but I've certainly learned over time to. I think the one thing that we really sort of embrace by proxy is not radical honesty or transparency, but not letting things fester. And if there's an issue, to sort of talk about it right away. That's kind of the one thing that we try and infuse in culture.
Right. And how about feedback?
So that's one of the questions I ask people that I'm thinking about hiring is, have you ever given your superior direct feedback, right? Because there's nothing more dangerous than having sort of people on the team that are not really comfortable giving feedback. So that's very important.
So then let's stay with that for a second. Most people are very afraid to give their managers feedback because they're afraid I might lose my job. They're afraid it might be some backlash towards it or something else. How do you establish that culture of radical transparency and honesty for them to give that feedback without any fear?
You just kind of have to lead by example, and you have to, someone's got to be brave enough to be the first person to give feedback. And when they see when the rest of the team sees how they're treated, I think then people feel more comfortable.
So, from my understanding, it seems like that people are able to come to you constantly and give you feedback.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I want it.
So any Biproxi employees listen to this.
Exactly.
That's absolutely incredible. So what advice do you give to new entrepreneurs? Because I'm assuming now that you have your established career, you're an entrepreneur now, people are constantly asking you for advice. College students or other people are coming to you. What do you tell them?
Well, I think, listen, the first thing is make sure you're doing something you really love and have passion for. I think, you can look at many successful companies, and most of them really, whether you're with an investor or your partners, it's a 7 to 10 year sort of, journey. So I think you've got to really have a lot of passion about what you're doing. That's the first thing I tell people. And be intellectually curious, right? I mean, don't sort of in the back of your mind think this is the idea that I want to follow, and kind of put your blinders on, and then look up 4 years and realize that the model never made sense or whatever. Right? So try and always get up every morning making sure that you're working on the right thing, because actually in the real estate world, sometimes the deals you don't are the best ones you do, right?
Right.
So because you can end up wasting a lot of time.
And it seems like you found your passion in real estate from an early age. You've been involved in it since such a long time.
I have, and I think although I have to say I never envisioned really leaving Fortress to go to 10x. That was really a complete accident. But then I sort of got the bug. So
Got them. Not a bug. How's your family deal with this whole transition of you being an entrepreneur now?
I think they really enjoy it. I mean, I have older daughters, so my youngest daughter is almost going to college next year. So there's not for the sacrifice you'd make when you were younger. But they're all very supportive. They certainly follow Biproxi on Instagram, and actually two of my daughters actually interned, and they really love it.
Wow. They're not working full time yet?
No.
So with there's so much news going on in prop tech, so many things happening. What are you most excited about? The transformation.
I think it is interesting that there really haven't been any big exits yet, right? So there's been a lot of investor interest and a lot of capital has flowed in. There are a lot of entrepreneurs working on like incremental solutions, right? So it's going to be interesting to see whether there's going to be some consolidation in terms of some of these solutions being merged into one. But I think, listen, the residential market is what $1.6 trillion a year. The commercial real estate market, in terms of sales, the commercial real estate market's about $600 billion a year. I really like the commercial space because it sort of flies under the radar a little bit. There seems to be a lot more sort of interest in residential. But I think there's, if you follow what's going on around the whole built space, and to me, it feels like we're in the second.
Second, right. And they always say, we're not even beginning of the S curve, right at the bottom of it. But I like that you mentioned the consolidation part. I had this conversation recently with somebody that, there hasn't been really big exits. And also, there's no middle ground. Either you're like a unicorn, right? Or you're like just starting out. There's no middle ground yet for prop tech. And then everyone's talking about, like you mentioned, the consolidation part. Companies like VTS, the other companies are going to buy out the other ones, or whatever else it may be. Biproxi will buy all these other competitors and become.
I mean, in some ways, OfficeSpace.com is an example of that. It was started by an amazing couple entrepreneurs, but they'd been at it for 8 or 9 years, and they had a business model that they, were having trouble scaling. For us, it made so much more sense because we can actually use that massive listings database to cross-sell all our services on the Biproxi side. So, it just made a lot of sense from a synergy standpoint.
Right, gotcha. So, what are some non-obvious habits that have made you better?
Non-obvious habits. I am generally very self-aware of what I'm good at and what I'm not. So I think if you were to talk to people that have worked with me, I think I'm pretty open and honest about sort of where I should spend my time and where I shouldn't, which generally has kind of made me more efficient.
How'd you go about that?
I think just over time I've sort of realized what I'm good at and what I like doing, and it's sort of evolved.
Right. Yeah, but to create that self-awareness part.
Yeah, I don't know. It just, I guess I've been fortunate enough to, I don't think I necessarily maybe had it early in my career, right? So it's just one of those things that happens over time. I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by, amazing kind of partners and co-founders, and that to a degree has probably helped.
Wow. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. So, I mean, I have so many questions about your own personal development because it seems like you went through a whole transformation, very self-aware, having constant feedback, being able to give feedback, doing something you want to do and enjoy. What's your self-development like? Growth.
In general, I think over time I've probably, I think how many, at Fortress, I had a very interesting role because many times, and I was there during the financial crisis, so many times I was the person that would have to come in and sort of restructure the investment. So I got a tremendous amount of exposure to larger corporations and CEOs and kind of what they went through. So that sort of helped me a lot. And that was not a very fun time to go through that. And then I just sort of took that into 10x, which was a little bit of adjustment again because I was dealing with Silicon Valley and sort of a different culture. And hopefully, I took what I learned there and I'm applying it by proxy.
Do you have mentors?
So I don't really have. I had mentors early on, but at the moment, as you know, sometimes being the CEO of a startup, it's a pretty lonely place. So I do get great guidance from our board, right? So that's kind of who I would go to if I really needed advice.
Right. It's incredible, like you mentioned the fact, like, if you were to come into a room now of a bunch of founders, you'll probably look like the grandfather out of everybody over there,
Yeah.
And to come like start a startup at
Yeah.
at 34,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it's absolutely incredible. It shows that a lot of people when they reach some type of thing after working for so many companies, they're like, you know what, my career's practically over. I'm just going to wait it out until I retire.
Yeah, no, there's definitely times when you wake up in the morning saying, this is a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
But it's also a lot of fun.
It's like practically having another kid again.
Yeah. And listen, you feel responsible for obviously the team, and there's you can probably let the pressure get to you if you do that. But like I said, generally, myself and the other co-founders are pretty optimistic and we've done it before, so hopefully we'll do it again.
I think I read a study recently saying that the most successful founders are usually people that start their company like post 40.
There's no question. There's empirical evidence that experience matters.
And I'm sure. So that's actually a good question. Like, all you guys have obviously you worked together before, so you have some type of collaboration. You know how to work with each other. You know everyone's strengths and weaknesses. But because you've each one had such an extensive career already, it goes back to our culture thing. You come with your preconceived notions and judgments, right? So how do you guys fix that?
Yeah, so that actually has been very easy. I mean, again, because Jan and Thatcher worked with me at 10x. The one thing that we did not have an issue, and I think investors were very nervous about this when they see 3 or 4 co-founders, like who does what. It's very clear amongst us who runs the company, who's responsible for new business, who's responsible for strategy. So I think that was actually very comforting to the investment community because they can probably get a little bit scared when there's 4 founders and it's not clear who's doing what.
Right. You have 4 or 5.
So there's really 4.
4. Right. So yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. I hope you guys didn't have such a big fight about equity.
No, it was fine.
How'd you grab the CEO role?
I mean, Jan worked for me when we were at 10x. He ran the broker channel. I recruited Thatcher to work for me. We were at 10x, so I was the GM of 10x itself, which had about, I think our team was probably 350 people at one point. So of the 3 of us, it seemed like the natural choice.
And you obviously had the most experience. Yeah. Wow. So what do we tell little Gordon? Graduating college, has everything. The whole world before him. He could go back to Argentina and work at a bodega there, or he could become a professional soccer player. He could go, do something. Who knows? What do we tell him?
Well, like I said, I think this before. I think be intellectually curious and sort of do what you love doing or think you love doing. I mean, who knows? So many kids get out of college, they have no idea what they want to do, right? So, but to the extent that you don't enjoy what you're doing, don't be scared to make a change. I think that's the one lesson learned is you can sort of find yourself 10 years later, sort of having done something that you really don't have that much passion for.
Right.
So that's what I would encourage people.
That's incredible, and you've done it yourself. You've been intellectually curious. You loved all your jobs, but you constantly started to learn to grow, progress more. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've been very lucky.
Yeah, 4 daughters, beautiful family, a great startup, a great career. What else could you really ask for?
Not much. Well, obviously, we all want our health, right? So that's probably the most important thing. But no, in general, it's kind of full force ahead.
Wow, I hear a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, very lucky.
Do you practice gratitude?
Yeah, I try. I'm not as I'm not. I write these things down I'm supposed to do every morning, right? And I don't always do them, but I try. So.
Do you have like a morning routine?
I do.
What is it?
I mean, there's like 7 or 8 things I try and do. I try and meditate. I try and read a few things. I try and try and stay away from email for a while, and I'm not always that great about doing it, but I do try.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
progress, not perfection. So, it's interesting. Another thing, like, you guys decided to build your startup in San Diego, not a Silicon
Yeah,
Valley, which is, the mecca for startup world. Not New York, which is, you could call the capital for real
you could,
estate.
you could,
Um,
and there's a huge prop tech scene here.
yeah. Why San Diego?
Well, so there were some selfish reasons, but
Surfing, obviously.
no. So I mean, obviously, I'm from the Bay Area. At 10x, we had our engineering team in the Bay Area. That was a very challenging place to run a business. It's gotten very expensive, and so that I sort of ruled that out. New York, just because I was in the Bay Area, it didn't make a lot of sense because I'd have to be on a plane the whole time. So then we looked at LA, we looked at Denver, we looked at Salt Lake City, and I have two daughters who are in college in San Diego, so I was spending a lot of time down there. I just kept on looking around. I looked at the universities, and you've got UC San Diego, which has got an amazing engineering program. You've got Apple just announced they're opening a campus down there. Amazon's there. Walmart Labs is there. It's much more affordable than LA or some other parts of California. So if you're going to stay in California and pay the state income tax, it's actually a very interesting choice. And it's got a real airport. I think there's 4 flights a day to New York, and there's 4 flights to San Francisco. So rightly or wrongly, that was a decision I made. And I think actually even the investors, we had an amazing recruiter that is sort of one of the best kind of technology recruiters in California. Probably California, nationally also. And he didn't really understand the decision. And now he's kind of come around. So
I'm sure it definitely adds to the mental health of the employees, being in such a place like
it's a beautiful place to live.
Right.
So it's got its own challenges. It's got the same homeless problem that San Francisco has, but but from an affordability standpoint, for people who want to try and buy a home, unless you really need to be on the water, whatever, you can actually, it's really relatively affordable compared to LA.
Right. Now that's incredible. Yeah, you see most startups these days leaving all these major cities because it's unaffordable.
Yeah.
Just look at San Francisco. So, what departing message do we tell the world?
Oh boy, what departing message to tell the world? Listen. I think be grateful for what you have, and um, make sure that you're. I guess what I would say is, I always try and treat people the way I want to be treated, and I'm kind of very grateful for where we are now, but I'm certainly obviously not satisfied. We got a long way to go.
Right. Never be satisfied. Gordon, goes without saying, anything I can do for you, your family, by proxy family, anything, always here, always reach out.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
So
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming.